I got involved with Troma through my friend Alex Sherhart. I was doing the soundtrack for a documentary that he was filming about homeless people living in tunnels underneath New York City. One day he calls me up, he goes, "Hey Chris, I'm hired to be an actor on a Troma film, and they're looking for someone to do the music soundtrack for the feature film. Would you be interested?" And I hadn't heard of Troma.
We take you to a little company here in New York that successfully made movies for years on shoestring budgets. Indeed, since it came out in 1981, it's made millions, inspired sequels, sold more than 200,000 videos, and spawned enough merchandise to shame Godzilla. And with its growing film library, video business, and merchandising, it's as potent a brand as Disney.
I was invited to come up on location upstate New York in Peekskill, I believe. They were shooting some battle scenes, and went and met Lloyd and Michael from Troma. Played him. I carried a ghetto blaster with me to play him some of my musical pieces. And as I finished up playing him, a few selections, Lloyd says, "Hey, Alex tells me you're an actor." I said, "Yeah, I've done some acting." He goes, "Well, would you like to do a part in this film? I want you to be a really bad guy. I want you to be like a terrorist and capture your friend Alex over here." I said, "Okay." So they told me to go make my own costume, write my own dialogue, which I did. So I put together a costume. As you can see up here, this is a beret. This is a beret that I designed to wear, for my character to wear. So I grabbed a weapon, which ironically was a weapon that basically the same weapon I used when I was a ranger in Vietnam, and kind of put together this costume of a bad guy, a military bad guy, and shot the scene. Took no more than an hour to shoot the whole thing, and the next day I got a call, and Lloyd asked me if I wanted to do the soundtrack for the feature film.
You've been in the entertainment industry for, God, over 4 decades. Now, whereabouts did you start off, and how did it lead you up to today?
Well, I started actually in Los Angeles. I had left the Army, and I went back to college. I decided I wanted to be an attorney. And I was in school for about a semester and happened to meet some guys who had a little blues band.
Okay.
And I started hanging out with them and jamming with them and started singing. And that was the end of my law career. I joined the band and started singing blues songs, and that was it. About that same time as well, my sister married the bass player in Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So I had the opportunity to meet some players that were in the big time, so to speak,
right,
and got a feeling of, if these guys can do it, maybe I can too. I lived in Hollywood from 72 up till 76 and started my own band there. Chris DeMarco and the RGF, which was a group of guys that I met in Boston, who joined me in Los Angeles, and they'd had the band RGF, and we sort of combined to create this entity.
The process lasted about 2 months on Troma's War, as I recall. This was quite a few years ago, but probably unique in that I never got to see a complete cut. I got the reels as they put them together. It was enjoyable for me. It wasn't difficult in that regard, and it was maybe even more enjoyable because I could take just a block of time. They would send me a reel, maybe anywhere from literally 30 seconds to 10 minutes. And I would look at it and just start playing. I had a little TV set up, and I would just start playing along, usually playing the drums on the keyboard. I had a software package by Atari then for composing. I'd play the drums and get a beat going, then put it on a loop, and then I could start playing piano and create a musical passage, if you will, and build in that way. One interesting thing about this track is I am convinced that Bruce Springsteen stole this from me. Is if you listen to a song called Philadelphia, it's exactly the same key, the same chord changes, and at that time, guys in my band played with him too. So there was a musical cross right there, intersection. And I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say Bruce Springsteen, and then he got an Academy Award too, the prick. But if you listen to that song, Philadelphia, you will hear this. Ultimately, I'd just figure out how we'd get the blocking to how long it was, precisely to the second, and put all the instruments in. And I played the drums not as a loop. Ultimately, I would have the loop, but then I would throw that away and I would play live all the way. So I could put fills in and stuff, and it didn't sound like it was just a loop drummer. Then I would play the bass, play the keyboards, play the strings, put the horns on. I played all of it. When that was done, I would turn it over to my guitarist, Paul Mutimere, and he would kind of just do his own thing. I knew his playing. He played in my band, so I knew what he was capable of doing, and he loved to just go after it, and I'd just give it to him. And he'd usually start around midnight after we'd worked all day on doing any particular portion, and then he would just play guitar. Next day, say, "What do you think, Chris?" And usually I loved it. He's a great guitarist.
I was a loner behind the lines, an unknown soldier in troubled times, but I survived 1,000 times in a world gone wild. Throw me a lifeline, throw me a lifeline. I'm over my head, sinking fast. I'm taking me down, but it never lasts. I'm over my head, I don't care. As long as you're by my side, I'll survive. Alive through a field of fire.
Alive came to be in the soundtrack because when I first met Lloyd and Michael in Peekskill, that was one of the pieces of music I brought along to show them what kind of music I was generally making. As soon as he heard it, about 15 seconds in, he started getting excited and he goes, "That's it, I want that, I have to have that song." It had been recorded about 3 years before at Media Sound Studio on 57th Street in New York. I was working with John Anthony, who had produced Genesis, Queen's first album, and he had one big hit record called How Long Has This Been Going On? We'd done that 24-track master quality, like I said, before Troma's War. I kind of thought he just was talking about the song. My intention was to re-record it so that everything, there was musical and sound continuity through the film. But he wouldn't hear it. He wanted that as it was. So that's the one song that was not done specifically for the film.
Come on, Taylor. Let's go for a stroll.
What?
Come on. I want to give you the shirt off my back. Come on.
A full moon. I guess we're lucky. At least we don't have to sit around in total darkness.
I've always loved full moons. I lost my virginity under a full moon.
I never thought my life would end like this.
I'm planning to come to this alive.
This morning you were scared, stiff, and crying your eyes out.
You tried chopping Siamese twins apart with the machete and not change.
Yeah.
Storm is rising, my blood is boiling. A storm is rising, the time is come, the time is come.
That one piece of music, I was able to use experiences that I had had when I was a soldier in Vietnam. And as a soldier, you know, sometimes in movies it's glorified. It's made into something that it really isn't in the real world. People that are soldiers that are anticipating going into battle the next day, they're very quiet. They know that possibly they won't make it. They won't live through it, the experience. They might lose friends. And so it's a reflective time. And I tried to write that song, Storm is Rising, in using that knowledge that I had, that you're thinking about bigger things than just getting out there and shooting and killing and all that stuff. So I wrote the lyric and was very happy with the way the lyric came out. I'm not sure that it mattered in the big picture, because essentially the music carried the action of the film along. I don't know that that the lyric was out front enough for people to pick up on, but it made me feel good because I knew that I had written it according to the way I experienced real combat and going into combat. When we got finished with it, Lloyd invited Paul and I to come into the final mixing of the film, where they put together the whole soundtrack, the dialogue, the music, the background sounds, the explosions, all of that. And it was funny because, as far as we were concerned, they were burying my wonderful soundtrack, and they had all this screaming and yelling and explosions and stuff. We were like going, could you push that up a little bit? And after a while, though, they said, maybe you guys ought to go out and get some coffee, because I think we can handle this. So, and that's how that's what Troma does. Is they're making movies to, you know, shock you, and they're not making musical entities particularly. When they were doing the mix in New York, they needed a screen at a certain point, and Lloyd goes, "Who we got here?" And he looks around. Charlotte was the only woman there. So they put her in the booth, and she was like really kind of uptight, you know, and Lloyd goes, "Okay, scream," and she goes, "Ah, no, scream, come on, ah." It was hilarious. Finally, Lloyd got a little more of a screech out of her, a scream, and they used it in the film. They had a top-notch studio to mix Troma's War. That mixing board was longer than my whole recording studio. They must have had 5 engineers, all of them rolling up and down the board and moving things around. It was great. It's in a theater, full widescreen, to watch the movie as they're putting pieces of the sound together. It was impressive. So I don't know what the budget for the film was, but they spent, that was top level to finish that film off.
Hey, St. Elmo, you know, I had you pegged for a dead hero. How'd you manage to get out alive?
I figure my chances would be better if I jumped from that truck rather than stay in here.
A full-fledged hero you are.
After the film was done, Troma had a big party and showing of the film, and but I do remember going to the premiere with my wife Charlotte, and we invited several friends with us, and I admit it was cool to you know, in the beginning of the movie when the credits come, and to see your name up there on the big screen. It was very enjoyable, and but that was actually the first time I saw the movie in its entirety. So I was watching it just like everybody else for the first time. Luckily, I kept the 2-track 15 IPS master mixes from when I did the film. Essentially, I have my master tapes. Lloyd used those master tapes and dumped it in, you know, in doing the film, and then gave me back the masters. So I've had them all these years. The glue has failed over the years on a lot of tape, which it's called sticky tape syndrome. We checked these tapes, and fortunately, it didn't have any sticky tape syndrome to speak of, just slight amount. And so we meticulously were able to take each segment of the soundtrack one at a time, run it through into the program, stop, clean all the heads, do the next piece, and we did all 16 pieces slowly, and were able to dump it into our digital program, where we were then mastered it, which is essentially making all the pieces flow as you listen at the same volume, and tweak the frequencies, whether maybe boost a little bottom or bring down a little high end, all those sorts of things you do in the mastering. We did that, and it actually turned out sounding better than the original tracks that we had for Troma's War. I am very excited about this project that we're doing together. The idea of having the music from the soundtrack, or from the film Troma's War, as an entity on a record is just fantastic. In my career, I have done a lot of jingles and I've done albums which weren't promoted, but ultimately I never got my music on a record. By the time I had music coming out, everything was CD, records were gone. So this is doubly exciting because finally I get my music on a real record.